want to get to a WSN9 original. In 2019, our Larry Miller was selected by the National Association of Black Journalists as its Ethel Payne Fellow, a fellowship program that awarded $5,000 to produce a story on the continent of Africa. Larry was set to leave for his trip in March of 2020, but COVID restrictions would mean a 2-year delay. In May, Larry made the nearly 10,000-mile journey from D.C. to Johannesburg, South Africa, to investigate the country's ongoing debate around land reform. He looked at why most of the country's farmable land is held by a small minority of white farmers and why some believe taking that land and giving it to black farmers is the only way to right the wrongs of the past. Here's his special report, Land of Their Ancestors.
When you think of South Africa, the images of exotic animals in Kruger National Park usually come to mind, or the breathtaking views from Table Mountain in Cape Town. But likely, you immediately think about Nelson Mandela, the country's first black president and anti-apartheid activist. He fought for equality and equity, a fight that continues to this day, across more than 96 million acres of farmland throughout the country.
So here we also believe in nature that we need to share, whether with insects, whether we need to share.
Meet Pori Nansani.
This one, we put it here to protect the soil, to keep them moist.
The 37-year-old helped construct and maintains a small organic farm near the capital city of Pretoria.
When you see the leaves like this, it means it's got enough nitrogen.
His farm has an unconventional beginning. Nansani and his neighbors began to farm on vacant, fertile land near their houses, without notice, without reservation, without government support. A small collection of crops, spinach, onions, and green peppers grew by several acres. It got so large, they eventually needed more resources to maintain it.
We started asking permission because we knew along the way we'll need support. Because in this industry, you can't make it alone.
In South Africa, land is seen as a fundamental right, something citizens should have access to simply because they are citizens and members of the community. It's estimated more than 27 million South Africans are living without proper housing, crammed into tiny tin houses built by the ruling government. Getting access to land could elevate millions out of poverty.
Land is a key for us. And then we started to work the land, and we have been creating benefits, I would say job opportunities, trainings, food.
But getting access to land and the resources to maintain it is a topic that's embroiled many South Africans. To really understand the issue of land here in South Africa, we have to look at the numbers. In terms of demographics, blacks represent 75% of the population here in this country, whites just under 8%. But when we look at who owns the land, that tells a completely different story. Whites own more than 75% of all farming land here in South Africa, blacks just 4%. The inequality is due in part to the Native Lands Act of 1913. The law made it illegal for blacks to purchase or lease land outside of designated reserves. It denied blacks access to land which they owned or had been leasing from white farmers. This law, and others like it, would eventually lead to the start of racial segregation or apartheid. To increase the number of black landowners, some members of parliament have called for the country to move forward with what they call expropriation without compensation, essentially taking land from white farm owners and redistributing that land to black farmers. Leanne Matthys is a spokesperson for the Economic Freedom Fighters, South Africa's far-left political party.
We have had settlers, and I don't even know if we should even call them settlers, but we have descendants of land invaders that arrived on our continent here in South Africa and stole land. So the deeply seated issue here is thievery, it's thuggery, it's land that was dispossessed.
While some members of the ruling party, the National African Congress, support land expropriation without compensation, legislative proposals often go nowhere. A proposed constitutional amendment that would allow for the expropriation of land without compensation failed to pass in December of 2021. Tembike Nakawatobi is a lawyer and author of the book Land Matters, South Africa's Failed Land Reforms and the Road Ahead.
Land reform is primarily driven by the land-owning elite that is mainly white, mainly wealthy, and mainly inherited that land ownership from apartheid. Of course, many of them argue that they acquired their property in the open market. But the problem with that explanation is that it ignores what that market was, that it was always a white, apartheid-created and exclusionary market.
I personally support the land expropriation without compensation. But however, my worry is, what do we do with the land we have currently?
As it's proposed now and is advocated by these political parties, doesn't make sense to me as a farmer.
Portia Mahlobo isn't a natural farmer.
What makes sense is putting together a program that, yes, it benefits the farmers, it bridges the gap between those who have and those who have not. No, never.
The industry sort of found her. She got involved out of an interest in helping communities become more self-reliant. She helps manage a small farm, a project called You Reap What You Sow. She doesn't support land expropriation without compensation.
Yeah, this is broccoli. On the other side of it, there's some cabbages here.
She says for farmers like herself, they're concerned less with policy and more with getting adequate support.
Many farmers are struggling because some have access to land, but no other resources.
The equipment, tools, and all other things, resources are concerned. So we still need a lot of support from the government.
Farming isn't a very profitable business. I'll give you the...
But also included in the conversation are farmers like Kuz Delarai.
This one is a tricky one.
Delarai has been farming for decades with an assortment of animals and crops on his farm. As both a farmer and academic, the thought that his 500-acre farm could be taken away without compensation is concerning.
I've paid for my land by working very hard for it. So I didn't inherit it. I've started with nothing. But I worked 10 hours a day for many, many years and pay for the land that I currently own. And if you now take it away from me and give it to people that has done nothing to it, that's a reality. Whether you're a white or a black guy, that's the same concept. Apartheid was wrong. I agree with that. I have always disagreed with it. Why was it wrong? It was economically wise a wrong concept. You don't say to people, because that's your color, you can only get this job. You make the market open and you let the people buy what they can afford, let them develop themselves.
The Transvaal Agricultural Union of South Africa represents commercial farmers like Delarai.
And we haven't got a problem if the farmer is a black or a white or a woman or a man. That's not the issue. What we need is a successful farmer. And that is for us crucial. Now the government started in 1994 with this land redistribution program from themselves. And by their own admittance, more than 95% of the land that they transfer to them, they make it a race issue, we don't want to do that, to the black new owner. 95% plus of that land go out of production.
But some see the elevation of black farmers as a necessity. And if it requires white farmers to have their land taken away, then so be it.
Land is the only solution to this country. And we not just want land for the sake of land. We want land to have our own companies. We want land to take control of the economy of this country.
Incredible reporting.
Thank you.
Very nice job. I want to ask you, what's next for everyone in this story, and what have you learned?
Yeah, well, I think first there's a fear, at least among some, that if they decided to move forward with this policy of land expropriation without compensation, that it would have devastating consequences for the economy, similar to a policy that we saw in Zimbabwe and the economic consequences that we saw there. When I talked with Mr. Nakawatobi, he was really clear that any impact to the economy would be negligible and actually actually it would be helpful because it would lift so many out of poverty. You know, I think you walk away with a sense that it isn't clear what's going to happen next. The government has been kind of using this as kind of bait to drum up votes, and it isn't clear whether or not they're going to move forward. And so they're kind of stuck in this holding pattern. They keep talking about it and nothing's getting done.
Right. Biggest takeaways, I mean, traveling so far to cover this story, what have you learned and what do you take away from all this?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. You know, I think we have our own issues here at home, right, when it comes to race relations, what this country looks like for some people and what it looks like for others. What you find is that in a multicultural society, those issues still exist, whether it be here or in a country that's 10,000 miles away. But I think there's a learning lesson here ultimately, is that if we do a lot more listening and we take aggressive policy positions and move forward with that, I think everyone wins in the end.
All right, absolutely. Listening, very important.
Yeah.
Larry, we appreciate it. Excellent reporting.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for joining us on this Sunday.
Girl, it's early.